here to discuss all things NRL and anything sports related. Please give a warm Aussie g'day to the footy fanatic and America's own Corey Jackson in Outside the Sheds.
Greetings and salutations and welcome back to Outside the Sheds. Shedheads, I hope you had an incredible week. I hope that it was a little bit more than footy, but if it was not, and you know, I know some of you experienced April Fool's Day a few hours ago, maybe 16 to 17 hours ago. Some of us are experiencing it today. I got caught on an incredible April Fool's joke that happened halfway around the world, and I hope you all saw it. You guys are probably, it's nothing, but, you know, with Ryan Pappenhausen allegedly going to the Tasmanian Devils to start an AFL career, yeah, that caught me off guard. I think I saw it at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, so that probably didn't help the situation at all, too. But I just hope what I'm saying is that you've had a very, very incredible and fulfilling week since the last time we've come together as one big familia. Now, as we go into round 4, I still continue to punch and weave a little bit. We looked at the numbers, went 4 for 8 this last round, 19 of 30 so far for the season, so we're still breaking over 500. Not the incredible lightning start like we did for the first 2 rounds, but we're still holding our own. We're still holding our own. And like I said, that's what makes this game so incredible. You know, I think you all know that I'm a huge college baseball fan too, and I think we're really setting up for an incredible College World Series, which you guys know if you've been Shedheads for a very long time. I go deep into the bunker the second, third week in June, and I go up to Omaha for the College World Series, and I have an incredible 10 days. Some of my favorite Shedheads will actually be around me during that time period too. And it's just a very, very special time. It's been in my family for more years than I like to talk about since, like, you know, your illustrious Shedadamas had a birthday last week. But what I'm saying is sports has just been magical recently. I'm saying no matter what sport you follow, it's just been really just, you can't really pick who's going to win, who's going to come out on top. And the NRL is just, to me, just the tip of the iceberg of this. And we got a couple matches this round that we're going to go into a deep dive about a little bit later, but that just showed you, like I say, you just never know who's going to come out on top. Now, we'll start off with that first game of round 4, Roosters 33, Seagulls 16. The big DCE returned to Fortress Brookvale in the new Tricolors uniform. And it definitely lived up to what we were hoping it was going to be. Now, the scorched earth got watered down by the monsoon before the game. But, you know, we got some really, really good signs in the crowd, which we won't talk about here. I think you probably have all seen them up to that point. But if you haven't, please go check them out because it will make you laugh. But again, I've always thought from the beginning that the Roosters were a better club than Manly this year. I did pick Manly not to have the greatest of seasons, but I don't think I was expecting the result to produce what it produced. And as all of us know up to this point, it was the axing of Anthony Seibold that cost him his job and his tenure as the head coach of the Manly Seagulls after 3.5. But again, it's a crazy business. Coaching's a crazy business. You got to be half crazy to do it, especially in the professional levels. But it is, again, something that's always in the back of your mind. And you know, we've had 3 coaches going into this season that have been under the pump, and it was again, Seibold, Toddy Payton, and, you know, and the rumblings are getting a little bit louder, but Shane Flanagan down with the Red V. So we'll see if another axe falls for one of these coaches. I think Toddy Payton's in a good position now, and I think he's only going to get stronger. But again, you never know with this game. Big victory, though, and you could see the relief that it was over with for DCE, that he got through that first match with Manly, got the victory, most importantly, and then the Chooks, again, continue to build their foundation, and that halves combination continues to gel and get stronger. Tigers 32, Warriors 14, the first haymaker of round 4, down 10-0. the Tigers go to the Rumble Islands and show the salt that it's now been, I guess, just shot into the veins of this club. Benji's Batallion goes in, minus one of their biggest weapons in Jerome Luai, and pull out the victory. It was, I think, I will say this, it was the biggest victory in the Marshall era since Benji took over the Tigers. It really has been. I think nobody really thought that game was going to come the way that it did, especially with Adam Dewey looking like that hamstring was done and then coming out and playing the game that he did. The young Bucks on that Tigers team just, again, really stepping up, buying into what Benji's selling. Okay, I'm stopping right there because we're going into a deeper dive about this game here soon as we go into the deep dive. But big victories for the West Tigers, and it has the jungle rocking. It has the jungle rocking and setting up for that Monday showdown that's coming up on Easter Monday. Broncos 26, Dolphins 12. Even with a tough week up in Brisbane, the Broncos continue to pull out the hoodoo over the Dolphins. The Battle of Brisbane somewhat has become very one-sided. The Dolphins are always in the fight in these games. They seem to know the magnitude of what this game means for Brisbane. It's kind of like two gangs going at it. Whose turf is it? You know, it is a big thing. And the Katoni Stags, I think it will always be the image of the Battle of Brisbane when he scored the try in their first meeting at Suncorp, and then, stood up and said some things we don't really want to repeat here on Outside the Sheds. Repeat it amongst yourselves up in Brisbane. But it showed you the passion, what it means to both clubs, and especially for the Broncos, who want to stay the kingpin of Brisbane. And by every means they have been. They've taken care of business. But, I will say something that came out of the match for me is some people have laughed it off. I am not going to laugh this off. I think Tony Staggs is playing himself into being one of the best centers in the competition. You tell me a center that runs harder every carry. You got guys like Crichton who just are magic. And Stephen Crichton is magic. But he never looks like he is an atom bomb waiting to go off every time he catches the ball. Because he's thinking. He's going to play make. He's going to do something. Tony Staggs is a lit piece of dynamite every time he touches the ball. He looks for contact. He looks for violence. And he looks to score with every carry. So I really enjoy seeing him really coming into his own. And I'm going to say it. He is one of the best centers in the competition. Bar none. But, again, Broncos taking care of business. Finns, who look strong for a couple weeks, again, fall back a little bit. But the Battle of Brisbane goes to the Maroon squad. And again, it shows me a lot of what's going on in Brisbane. Again, another tumultuous week. And this team just knows they can't control all of those outside factors, but what they can control what happens on that pitch and on that field. And the Broncos showed that again. And here's another haymaker. Knights 24, Bulldogs 16. The boys from the Hunter going into the kennel and outperforming the Canterbury Bulldogs. Some people's pick to be a top 4 side this year. And, Dom Young in this squad, no one gave them a chance. Missing, $2 million worth of player with Brown and Ponga out. Sharp still a little banged up, but still playing as his body tries to heal up and him trying to play through it. And what these guys have done in Newcastle, and again, I have to stop myself because I could just go on a diatribe right there about the Knights, but we're going to go into a deeper dive about them and the Tigers here in a second. But that was a huge victory. And what makes, when a victory is huge is because one club just skyrockets in people's eyes, and one club gets thrown under the waves a little bit. And that's what's going on with the Bulldogs right now. And it looks like we're back in 2025 again, because now we're all talking about their attack. And didn't we just have this last year with Toby Sexton and Lachlan Galvan and what's going on, with the halves, Should some of the halves be more centers? It's crazy that they're at the exact same spot almost that they were at last year. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do at Canterbury in this whole situation. But they don't have much time to turn around because they've got a huge Friday night clash against the South Sydney Rabbitohs that they better have it together because South Sydney is ready for that game. Panthers 48, Eels 20. The Battle of the West was pretty much all one-way traffic. It really was. The Panthers revenge tour takes another scalp, and they are just putting teams to the sword. It is, they're collecting scalps and just embarrassing teams. Milky Jenkins, 2 more tries, leading the competition by, I think, 3. I think the next closest try scorer has 7. But Jenkins just continues to produce. And this guy, what makes his story so great is, he didn't play finals last year because Cleary, Ivan went in a different direction, and Milky had to sit on the sideline. And that burned him. It burned him. Because you have to say that Thomas Jenkins was playing some incredible football and had no business to an extent being substituted. But he was. And he has come back this season showing with not even a second doubt in anybody's mind that this guy is a big-time performer and he won't be sitting down for anybody any time in the near future. And again, some major injuries falling the way for the Eels, which could affect them for the next few weeks. But I think this is all about the Panthers and what they're doing, them getting stronger almost. And they're going to be a little bit in the deep dive here in a second too. Cowboys 28, Storm 24. The Cows show tremendous heart. And I know they were playing at home, but I know in teams' minds what happens when the Melbourne Storm get up on you. I think they beat a lot of teams just from that feeling that we're on top of you looking down at you right now and there's nothing you can do. We're bellyaches, boys. You're just not coming back from this. And that was not the case because with 13 minutes to go, instead of closing it out, and I said this last week, Shedheads, I said this last week, will there be a hangover? Is this now in the Melbourne Storm's mind as a team that we cannot hold on to a lead? It's happened at the grand final. It's happened in the grand final rematch. And it just happened right now. And when teams start getting run down from behind, in whatever sport we're talking about, when teams start not being 100% confident that they can shut the door, you start having problems. I think what makes this so crazy is this is a bellyache team, and that is not something you expect from a bellyache team, is to have any type of form of non-confidence about closing something out. But we're seeing it with the Melbourne Storm because the final 13 minutes was all Cows. And all right, I got to do it. Yee-haw! Right? That's what you always hear in the background with the try up in Townsville. But they showed something. And unlike Manly, unlike to an extent, I don't want to say that about the Red V, but the Cows showed you that they're still playing hard and they're playing for Todd Payton and themselves. But they have not given up on this coach. They have not given up on the vision that he has for this team. And I will say the player that paid it back in hundreds, not just in ones, but in hundreds, was Jake Clifford. Jake Clifford, out of the box, showed that they were going to attack, and they were going to attack all night. That was maybe the best start I've seen in his entire career for Jake Clifford. The confidence that Jake Clifford had played with, and I think what this is coming from, is that Todd Payton now has said, Jake Clifford, you are in my halves. There's no more Jackson Purdue talk. You go out there and play the footy I know you can play. Jake Clifford, what did he have, 13 tackle breaks? Like, he was possessed. And that team followed him. And that was the thing that makes it so special, is that when you see a player like Jake Clifford, who isn't known for a guy that's just going to try to take over a game, he went out there to do it. He went out there to set a foundation. He went out there to show that this is what you're going to have to deal with for the next 80 minutes when you play us up here. And the Cows did it. The Cows showed it, and then they showed testicular fortitude by coming back in that last 13 minutes. A huge victory. Huge victory. And if it wasn't for these other two teams I'm getting ready to talk about, they're a team I should talk about too, because I'm spending a little extra time talking of how big of a match that was, and watching Jake Clifford step into that role that usually he's overshadowed by Tommy Dearden. This was Clifford, and it was great to see. And if he plays with that type of ferocity in his game, yeah, North Queensland might be able to do some things. They're young. I don't think Reed Monty's mustache is going to hold them back. I really don't. Sharks 34, Raiders 22, in an offensive explosion is what you can say about this game. The Xavier Savage try, when I think he snapped 5 guys' ankles, or 5 sets of ankles, maybe not 5 guys, 5 sets of ankles. Wow. And that was on the losing side that a player did that. The Sharks, I guess you can say, got themselves right again. Tricky. Trindle had a great game again. Will Kennedy, again, a guy who I feel does not get the respect from the rugby league community that he's owed and that he's deserved, that he plays with time and time again. Bubba is not the prettiest player that you can watch. He doesn't have that Billy Slater elusiveness. He doesn't have, some of these fullbacks, Teddy running around the field with his shorts pulled. He's not that guy, but he is perfect for what the Cronulla Sharks need. And that's all you ask for, right? You just need your team to be in cohesion. And he fits well. I'm thinking him and Trindle work really, really well. Nico Hines, when he actually gets himself into the game the way that I think he could, and the way that I think he needs to do more often, it was a big, big win for that team. And we'll have to see. We'll have to see where this goes going forward. I know that Ricky is a little frustrated right now. The team, the Raiders have played some good footy. They really have. But after the start they had last season, I just think that he thought they were going to have a better start to start this season. I don't think you hit the panic button yet because they're young. And I think this team is going to really kind of kick in. And they might be that team down the stretch that just is going after teams left and right. But at this current moment, they're having some issues. They're having some issues that haven't been straightened out. I told you a few weeks ago where I think the Sharks have the potential to be at. They just need to get on a roll. They need to get more confidence. And they need to put more results in like this and really start showing up that defense. But again, the highlight of that match was that Xavier Coates try. That was some sick stuff. And finally, maybe one of the hardest to watch games that we've seen for a while. Gordy, Maddie, I know you guys are really happy about this, but Titans 22, Dragons 14. The Dragons again suffer another loss where they had the lead at one point in the game. That horrible scenes of Kyle Flanagan being out cold for, they're saying, over 5 minutes on the field. You know my story about my home life. And when I told Mrs. Shedadamas that Kyle was out for 5 minutes, she's like, that's not good. That's not good at all medically. But I guess that means some things, but Kyle's already back at training again. So it shows you that, by no means is he taking a step back, but you just never want to see that from a player, let alone for him not to move as long as he went without it. But, again, going back to the Red V, losing a 6-point lead at half, the Titans just found a way to win that game. And you kind of wonder, did they find a way to win that game, or did the Dragons just find a way not to close out that game? And that's the type of game that was. It's not one we want to spend too much time on right now, except for congratulations to Hene to getting his first victory as the Titans head coach. but it was just some pretty atrocious footy all the way around. But again, first victory of the season, and who knows? You never know once a team finally gets up on that win board, get that first taste of the chocolates of the season, where they're going to propel to after that. But they've got a lot of work to do, Gold Coast, if they are going to do some things that a lot of people thought they might have the opportunity of doing, especially under this new leadership regime. Now, Shedheads, I'll tell you, time and time again, I've said it week in after week in after week out, whatever you want to say, year after year. I said when all the money is going one direction, I've always said this, always said this, you should go the other way. You should actually go the other way, because that is sport right now. When teams feel like they have no chance to win, or it looks like a team should have no business being in the competition or in the contest, that is when a team is most dangerous. That is when a team pulls out some impressive stuff. That is when a team takes your money. I hate to say it that way, but that's when a team takes your money, because all of the money is coming in and everybody thinks this is my for sure win. And I think the Waz were favored by 13.5 or 13 points over the Tigers. And what happened? The Tigers ended up winning by 13. That's the type of stuff that I'm talking about. And we had two matches like that this past weekend that easily checked those boxes. The West Tigers, Newcastle Knights. It just, to me, it shows you how strong this competition is, like I said a few minutes ago. But the damage that these two teams might do for the rest of the season, I think has been shown 100%. What they have, we're talking about Newcastle, a team that is missing $2 million worth of player in Ponga and Brown. What is this team going to be like when those two guys get back on, and let's say around 12 or 13, after they've played together for a while, what this team could look like? Yeah, impressive. You're 100% right. Thank you, Shedheads. Yes, impressive. Now, when you hear the term Benji ball, let's start with the Tigers. When you hear the term Benji ball, you instantly think of behind-the-back passes, gazelle sidesteps, just offensive playmaking, right? One of the reasons Benji Marshall is my favorite player in the history of the game, the guy that got me into the game. Totally different game, I understand, but just that Michael Jordan type of quality of, wow, he can do things maybe that no other player at this current juncture can do, right? And that was Benji, right? That was what attracted me to the game, was this playmaker. What's he going to do next, right? And that is what Benji ball, a lot of times I think, is what people kind of envision when you hear that term. And yes, the 2026 Tigers team has been a fun offensive side. You never know what they're going to do. They love doing the offloads. They love keeping the attack going. But to me, those are not the two major factors that are really shoring up my smoky prediction that are going to make the Tigers a tough team at the end of the season. And for me, a team that's going to finish in the top 8. And I'm going to go over those right now with you. Number 1, defense. The Tigers' defense is conceding 16.6 points per game on average in their first 3 games. All right? Now, that is the best number ever in the history of the West Tigers in points allowed in the history of the ball club. All right? Yes, I know, Shedheads, calm down, 3 games in the season. I get it. But let's kind of compare those numbers to some other teams in the competition. Right now, I don't even have to give you 3 guesses. I gave you 1, and you'll know exactly who the best team in the competition right now in defense is. The Penrith Panthers, the Revenge Tour. Right now, the Panthers are giving up 7.5 points per game in 4 games played. And that's even more insane because they played 1 more game than the Tigers, and they're 7.5. Think about that. That's insane. But again, that is why the Panthers are the Panthers. Now, on the other hand, the Melbourne Storm, a team that bellyache drives defense home, are conceding 17.5 points per game. Now, just put that in comparison. The West Tigers defense, and with the youth that this team has, is being a better defensive team on paper and on the scoreboard than Bellyache's boys. Defense wins championships, Shedheads. We say that time and time again. The greats from Bill Belichick have said that over here in Gridiron, NFL, whatever you want to say. Defense wins championships, and that is shown time and time and time again. And that defensive performance that the West Tigers put on this last weekend, of only giving up 14 points on the road in New Zealand, to maybe the hottest team in the competition besides the Panthers. And think about that. And they were a fully healthy squad. Luke Metcalf was coming back. Barnett was back. Everybody was in the stables for the Waz. And the Tigers still did that. A Tigers team that was down to start the match. And to me, that shows you something else about this team. This team in previous years, getting down on the road like that, under the freaking weight that comes with playing in New Zealand now, underneath the lights, in front of just ravenous crowds, they persevered, and they came back and did what they needed to do to win the game. But what they did to come back to win the game is my second point, and that is fitness. A sign of a club shows when they're really on top of their game is how a team finishes in the last 10 minutes of the half and in the last 10 minutes of the game. Because what that shows you is that you're a fit club. Your team is fit. Your team has the pipes, the lungs that they'll get in the tackle. They'll still scramble, but they can also get up and attack, right? And the Tigers are showing something that is just crazy to think about. Through 3 games, the Tigers have scored 9 tries in those periods of time. 9. And this last weekend against the Waz, they scored 4 tries in those time periods, of the last 10 before the half and the last 10 to end the game. That says everything. That shows a team that understands we have to finish strong to win games. And if you do this in this competition, if you are the strongest team towards the end of the half, towards the end of the game, you will win most of your games because you're finishing strong. And that's all that's coached, and it's all that's preached in these clubs. Finish strong. Finish strong. So when Benji goes out there and says we have a standard that we have to live up to be a member of the West Tigers, and people are kind of snickering, going, yeah, the Tigers there, right? You're right, the Tigers. No. You have to have that. You have to draw that line in the sand saying that we have to stand for something, because if we don't, we're going to get shellacked. We're going to get run over. And, that shows you everything about this club. It shows you the mentality that the West Tigers are playing with. And it's not just a mentality. They're physically putting that mental side on the map because of how they're finishing and how they're showing they should finish. It's impressive. Right now, everything is flowing the direction for the West Tigers. If you really tell me, or if you really ask me, they should be 3-0 because they outplayed South Sydney up in Gosford, and they just didn't get the chocolates at the end. They didn't get the victory. And I think what Benji did and what makes this team so special right now is I think he pulled them all to a side after that and said, see, if we do not close, if we do not finish strong, if we do not do the things that I've been preaching, we're going to feel empty when we walk out of that stadium because we know we should have won that game. And he got that chance and that opportunity to show that in full display when this team went to New Zealand. And to me, this is why this Easter Monday match is going to be so must-watch TV. We've got a few games, as usual, in round 5 coming up that's just must watch. But that showdown of your Shed Adamas against Dom, I mean, the Tigers versus the Eels is going to be some epic footy. Can't wait to see it. There's the chapters underneath the surface, Mitchell Moses coming up against the Tigers again, all that type of stuff that really gets resurfaced every time these two teams come head to head. Can't wait for it. It's going to be one of those special Easter Monday matches. And I'm just blessed to say that I've been to one. But anyway, that being said, it's going to be fun. Now, the other team, like I said, is the Newcastle Knights. And nobody would have expected the result that we saw from them again this last weekend. What I've noticed, Shedheads, and I think about this as I say this, what I've really noticed with the Knights this season is smiles on the faces of the playing group and a spirit that's in the brand of footy they're playing. Now let that sink in for a second, because even though this is one of the most physically grueling sports on the planet, rugby league, watching a team that just has that essence and is before the game as they're going through everything they go through to get themselves ready, and there's smiles and laughter on the field, I think that tells you everything. For one, I think it shows you a lot of confidence that this team has, because this team knows what they have that nobody else knows that they have, right? But it does say a lot about the team and the mentality that team has going forward. Now, I will always say this. I don't think that Adam O'Brien was a bad coach. I really don't. I think that he was put in a precarious situation. I think he took over a Newcastle club that was struggling. I think there was a lot of expectation on his head, the way that he came out of the Chooks system, out of the Rooster system. But it always seemed to me, when you watch the Newcastle Knights teams under Adam O'Brien, they looked pained. They looked like they were under the thumb. They looked like they were playing with a lot of weight on their back. And I don't know if they were playing with that weight on their back because Adam O'Brien was under fire a lot of times. That season when they won like 10 in a row, I don't know, 2-3 seasons ago, with Ponga out and they went on that magical run to get themselves in the final, they saved their coach's job with that run that year. So it always felt like Adam O'Brien was playing on borrowed time, and this team was just always under the pump underneath him. And it just never seemed like they had that energy or that explosion in their legs when they played. They seemed to just always seem like they were in the grind, right? You know what I mean? The grind, it just felt like they were just trudging through the games, trudging through seasons, unfortunate injuries falling on top of their head, which made the grind even harder. And with players like Kalen Ponga, Dane Gagai, Bradman Best, and now with the Fletchers, the supreme mullets on this team, it just seems strange to me why they weren't playing more free-flowing, attacking, let's have fun footy, right? Now, let's cut, not 12 months later, but let's cut to 2026. And that new ingredient that's been injected into this side is one Justin Holbrook. And I don't really know, Shedheads, if you really know much about Justin Holbrook. I first saw Justin Holbrook when he was over at St. Helens, right? His cheeks were always red. But that team was always demanding, and he had that team really just understanding what they were, what they needed to do, and they just, he just had them on a yo-yo. He had them on a string of what they needed to do and how they needed to do it. But there has been a shift in excitement and in culture that you can feel that's just permeating throughout this club. And I think one of the things that makes this such a special story is Justin Holbrook. Again, he is a Newcastle boy. He's an old boy for the club. And I think this is why sometimes people say that, Manly and some of these clubs like this that always want to talk about the old boys. Let's talk about having an old boy. Let's bring somebody in from the roots. Let's bring somebody in that understands about what it means to be and what it means to play in this certain jersey that they're representing. And that is Justin Holbrook to a T. And what he's now brought to this club is he's brought to this club what it means to be a Newcastle Knight and also what it means to represent the Hunter. And when you listen to players that have played there, Matty Johns, Andrew Johns, these guys, these greats of the club, Danny Badiris, players like that, you've got to understand what it means to represent a blue-collar town. And so what he's done is he's made this team get out into the community. He's made this team actually go down into the mines to see what it's like to really actually be blue-collar. What it means to really work hard to get the results, to get the money, to get whatever, the way you live, the culture. You have to have culture. And both of these clubs that we're talking about right now, the West Tigers, Newcastle Knights, you have to get that culture back installed into these organizations, into these teams, for them to understand what they need to do to go forward. And this team is playing with that. That working class blue collar toughness. Almost to the standpoint where they're saying we'll get more dirty than you to get the result. And that Jacob Safidi tackle that he did on Lachlan Galvin against the Bulldogs, to me, was just a microcosm of that. That hit was something you probably would have expected more from a Bulldogs player in front of that rabid crowd that is the Kennel, right? That is going down to Canterbury. And it was Jacob Safidi laying the wood on Lachlan Galvin. It also showed the toughness of Lachlan Galvin that he got back up. But from the opening whistle in that game, Newcastle showed they were there, and they were there to take care of business, bar none. They were more aggressive. There was just an edge, and it showed because at halftime the Bulldogs kind of shook their head and looked up at the scoreboard, and they're down 16-0, right? The Bulldogs fans almost didn't even know what to react to that. When you started hearing in the background chants of Newcastle in the crowd, I was like, what's going on here, right? But that chant of Newcastle is what we're talking about, the essence of the Hunter, the essence of being a Newcastle Knight. And that crowd that was there, that were Newcastle fans, were letting that team hear how proud they were of that half of footy that they played, right? And when you get a Newcastle team that is entrenched in playing good footy, and they get the backing of that club, and that club starts playing like the fans and vice versa, you know what I'm saying? Almost like a duality, I guess you could say. It just shows you what this club is. And then they showed something else. Because in the second half, the Bulldogs were coming for him. Ask the Raiders what that feels like when the Bulldogs start coming for you like that. And what did they do? They took a breath, they steadied the ship, and they finished, right? And just like I said with the Tigers, they finished late. They took over the end of the game, and they put it to bed, right? Yeah, all right. I know what you want to say. Sure, Phoenix Crossland's nose will never be the same. All right, yeah, all right. Yes, he did look a little bit like Rocky Dennis from The Mask. Okay. But winning eases all pain. It just does. And you saw the picture. Try to find the picture of Phoenix Crossland with the thumbs up with that broken nose. And there, yeah, it probably does not feel great. But the smile that's on his face, he'll give that broken nose maybe not every week because that's a lot of pain. But he'll give that for that type of performance. And he'll always remember that. When he looks in the mirror too. But he'll always remember that because that nose was that red badge of courage that he showed, and that was what the Knights did against the Dogs. Now, I want to talk about a player in that game that kind of is everything that we're talking about right now. Dom Young's hat trick came with one feature that I don't think we knew this ingredient was actually in this fancy dish. And that was a smile. Because I cannot remember Dom Young cracking a smile one time when he played for the Sydney Roosters. It almost looked like Dom Young was like, let's get this game over with. There was no fun, there was no joy, and then you just started hearing that he was out of touch with the playing group, and he just did not connect with the Roosters. He just did not connect. But I think what it shows, and I talked to Dom Young, I met Dom Young. I think the picture's up on my Instagram page, where Dom Young's torso meets my pecs, meets the middle of my chest. Yeah. And our leg, it just look at the picture. But Dom Young had a smile on his face when he was talking to me. And it was almost kind of like he knew something that I did not know. And yeah, I kind of busted his chops a little bit. I was messing around with him. I think he was getting a coffee or something, and I went in and talked a little noise to him, and we both laughed. But he shows the way that he's playing, the way that he played, that last drive, the big smile on his face running down the field. That is all Justin Holbrook. That is all what they've got going on in Newcastle right now. And again, that is why, again, we have another must-watch game setting up for Sunday when we watch the Raiders come up to the Hunter. And I'm going to say something right now. I cannot wait for you and myself to see how crazy and rabid that Newcastle fan base is going to be on that Easter Sunday game against the Raiders. It's going to be something special to watch and to see. And I'm going to tell you something right now. It's going to be very, very, very tough for your Shed Adamas to pick it up against the Hunters Heroes. I'm telling you that right now. So, again, Tigers, Knights, congratulations. Just epic performances for round 4. Now, so we go into the 40-20 Shedheads. The invasion of Fortress Brookvale by DCE and the Chooks just didn't culminate in a win. It also dropped the lethal axe and the literal axe on Manly head coach Anthony Seibold. As the great Ya said, off with their heads, right? All right, we know that didn't really happen. Last time I checked, Anthony Seibold, his head was still connected to his neck. But this firing just brings to a close this tumultuous chapter for the Manly Seagulls. To me, Anthony Seibold never felt like the right fit for the Manly Seagulls. He just seemed out of place. He just seemed like, let's get a guy that is as different to Des Hasler as we possibly can find. Still quirky, because Anthony Seibold has some quirkiness to him. We know that. But let's find a guy that is not Desi, who's got short cropped hair while Desi's got the flowing locks. But he just never really seemed like he was manly, right? He just never felt that way. And I think that was a problem. Because when you're not a manly man, and nothing against your masculinity, Anthony, but when you're not a manly man, it makes it very, very tough to be embraced by the Seagull old boys. The Manly Seagulls old boys make it very, very tough on people that come into their sheds, into their barn, into their locker room that aren't manly guys. I know there's some clubs that are like that. I get that. And I think that's what some clubs are very, 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 and let's be honest, very much are trying to find. Is trying to find that that feeling that, you got to be one of us, all right? But you've got to have years and years and years of great results for you to be able to bring something and pull something like that off. But, last season's debacle at Manly, that whole DCE situation, never allowed Manly to ever get going and get the right type of footing for the 2025 season. They finished the season 12-12, which we all know, and they finished 2 points outside of the top 8. I'm going to say this right now. If you're going to do and pull what the CEOs and the ownership groups that Manly did by firing Anthony Seibold, you should have just done it at the end of that season. They should have done it to me at the end of that season. Because coming into 2026, didn't we all feel the writing on the wall was there for Anthony Seibold? That there wasn't a lot of things that he was going to be able to do. That plane was starting to tightly corkscrew as it started to head down. And if any of you have been pilots or watched a good war movie, which I know most of you have, when that plane starts going down and starts corkscrewing like that, the tighter the rotations, you're not pulling up. It's a done deal. You're probably not even ejecting out of it. It's going to crash and you're going to be inside of it. And so when Manly lost those first 3 games of the season, it just felt like, this is going to be bad. And to lose the 3rd game to the prodigal son coming home, a.k.a. DCE, Daly Cherry Evans, you really knew, this is really not going to be good. But I do think it's crazy. I think it's crazy that they pulled the plug 3 games into a guy's 2-year contract extension. And it's just things that you've got to let a team have a chance to right the ship a little bit, right? You're already down 0-3 to start the season. But what about the Penrith Panthers last year? A team that, if it wasn't for a comeback by the Brisbane Broncos, which they did to everybody in the finals last year, they're playing for their 5th championship in a row, right? But they started the season 1-5. They started the season 1-5. So, okay, 1-5 is not worse than 0-3. Okay? That's still 3 more games for Manly to try to right the ship. And if you look at it, they pull the plug before they go up to Redcliffe. They pull the plug before Manly plays a game where you think of all the teams that they've played up to this point, this club might be the team that they have the best chance to get a victory against, in being the Dolphins. But it's almost like they needed to pull the plug after that game, because if they go up to Redcliffe, beat the Dolphins, then you really can't fire Anthony Seibold, right? You can't pull the plug on a guy after he gets a victory. So we had to pull it now. Because if he's 1-3, okay, well, maybe the ship's starting to get righted. Maybe things are about ready to get back on the tracks. So they had to pull it. And what it shows me is that they've always wanted to pull it. They've always wanted to kind of pull the plug on the Seibold experiment. So there's that. And then there's the thing of taking one of your favorite sons in Kieran Foran and putting him in the crosshairs and making him your interim coach. And I'm a huge fan of Kieran Foran. I am a huge fan of Foz. All right? I think that guy is being held together by electrical tape the last 4 years of his career. And he never once skipped a beat. He was getting his foot shot up at times. I'm just saying he was the walking wounded day in and day out. I think right now, Coach Foran is more healthy than player Foran has been in 6 years. But why would you want to do this to Kieran Foran? Yes, he's a Manly man through and through. Yes, the old boys got the guy they wanted. Yes, it would be great to see him right this ship and get Manly back to where Manly needs to be. But there are so many tough questions that need to be answered for Manly. And decisions to be made. And Kieran Foran has been upfront by saying that he's not afraid to have the tough talks with people. And when you've been in leadership for quite a long time, in playing groups, Yeah, you can understand that. You can understand that Kieran Foran has been in tough places and had to make tough calls. But it almost seems that Kieran Foran has been set up to fail. The only thing that's going to save Kieran Foran is this playing group. This playing group that didn't do much for Anthony Seibold. But can this team look inward and find an extra gear that for whatever reason Anthony Seibold was not able to help them find, and get that car running down the track the way that some people think they have the potential to do? But can he find that? Can he push the right buttons as a guy who's just learning the game from the perspective as a coach? And I think time will tell. I do think that Manly's going to play very, very tough for Foz at Redcliffe this weekend. But it's just crazy to think that he's in the position he's in right now after a decision-making. And a decision-making that came from something that I think is a major problem. And that is having an owner and chairman, being Scott Penn, if you didn't know his name, for Manly, and he resides in New York City. I don't know how much more out of touch something can sound and be than having a CEO and owner living on a different continent most of the time. I'll tell you what it means to me, Shedheads. Right now, your Shed Adamas is getting his resume put together, and it's getting ready to get sent to every club in the NRL for possible job opportunities. That's what's about ready to happen. Because if this can take place, and I can run a franchise in a club from sitting on a penthouse in Manhattan, well, my God, just think what your Shed Adamas can do being in the bunker of his location over here in the Divided States. Watch out! Takeover. Exactly. Shed Adamas takeover. But in all truthfulness, that is a problem. It's got to be a problem. And Manly, if they don't see that as a problem, that's maybe why they're in the position they're in right now. Again, though, I guess we are the benefactors of all this because we get must-watch TV to kick off round 5 because we get to see Foz's boys go up to Redcliffe and see if somehow Manly becomes the Phoenix and is resurrected, and they change the bird on the front of their jerseys and the crest to have a rising Phoenix coming out of the ashes, because that's what they're going to have. They're going to change the season around. And I do not have a lot of faith that it's going to start this weekend. But, again, it's going to have us watching. So, Manly, thanks for giving us must-watch TV. All right, Shedheads, last week it has been crazy with some major signings and movements in the league that I did not see coming. But I guess I shouldn't have not thought it wasn't possible. But it all kind of started at the Rumble Isles with the Waz. Because word drops that RTS, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, is going to be taking his talents over to the Super League for Wakefield Trinity. And I think it's a 2-year deal that RTS has signed to go over there to Wakefield Trinity. But it's sad for me because I'm a big RTS fan, and I was really excited to see him come back to play for the Waz. I will say this though, and I'm going to really stand by this. I have been disappointed because I think most of us feel it would have been great to watch Roger Tuivasa-Sheck get a chance to get his hand on the ball more often than he did. I would have had RTS without thinking twice as my fullback over Charles Nicoll-Klokstad. I would have. Charles is a great player, but to me, he's a center or a winger. I don't think he's got the pace to be an elite fullback, but I think he's a great footy player. But I think RTS gives you that X factor being in the back. All right, so I'm not going to be able to see that. And it's something I thought was always going to happen, which is not going to happen. But I think Wakefield Trinity is getting a huge steal with getting RTS. A huge steal. And maybe some of the biggest news that Wakefield Trinity's had for a very, very long time. All right, so that's one part of the move. The second part of the move is, okay, who's going to fill the shoes of RTS? Because there's got to be a grand scheme of things, right? Well, we find out that they do. And that is Big Will Warbrick from the Melbourne Storm. And, okay, well, I don't have a problem with this whatsoever. I would not have him put his hand in a box trying to feel what type of animal's in there, as some of us know. But he is a dynamic player. And it's one that makes you start shaking your head going, wow, what is he going to do with the Waz? Okay, I'm all on board for this. That's exciting to see. It looks like Warbrick is signed a 3-year deal. So he's going to be with the club for a while. So that's cool. That's cool. But then you go like this. Wait a second. Warbrick's leaving the Storm. Who's Bellyache got to come in to fill his position? All right. Well, here it is. Jermaine Isaako. And again, if you're a fan of the Purple Haze, if you're a fan of the Storm, you're going, hey now, Jermaine Isaako, 2-year deal to put on the purple. I can handle that. I think the only team right here that has to sit and go, whoa, no, is if you're a Finns fan. Because Isaako has been lights out for the Dolphins. So you have to think that Wakefield's happy. The Waz are happy. The Storm is happy. It is just the Dolphins that right now are looking, going, wow, we just lost a key member of our team and organization. But that's the game. And that is what makes rugby league just that sport where you just can't get your head around it going, did that really just happen? So congratulations to all those players on their new futures. Exactly. Very, very excited to see where this takes all of them. But again, man, rugby league, the game that just keeps on giving. Now, as we go in round 5, again, first off, do not eat too much chocolate, Shedheads. It is the Easter round. I'm very, very excited. Your Shedadamas has been cleaning the body out. He's been no drinking, no sweets, nothing like that, trying to get back into fighting shape. So just be careful when you start to try to overdose on those on the kids' chocolates. All right, just be careful. So let's go into some picks though. After advice from the Shedda, kicking it all off, like I said, the battle up at Redcliffe, Sea Eagles versus the Dolphins. I do think that Manly is going to fight to the end, but I think it's going to be Dolphins. I do think that they are going to rebound after the Battle of Brisbane. And they may take out some horrible violence on the Manly Sea Eagles. So I've got the Dolphins getting the first victory leading into round 5. Friday, we've got a big tussle. Maybe some of the best visions in the history of Easter Friday games. But Bulldogs versus the Rabbitohs. Yeah, I know we don't have any Jimmy Graham to go crazy on the field. But that's okay. That's okay. But I do think that the Rabbitohs get the victory over the Dogs, which will cause even more confusion at the kennel, and make Gus Gould maybe age just another couple inches, if you know what I mean. I got the Rabbitohs coming out on top in that one. And then to close out Easter Friday, Storm versus the Panthers, rematch of 2 years ago, grand final. I think the revenge tour continues. I think the Panthers, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, are going to make it 3 on a trot in the loss column for Bellyache's boys, which I'm going to have to go and do my research if it does come to pass that happened. When the last time that the Storm have gone down 3 weeks in a row. But I've got the Panthers winning that to close out Easter Friday. Saturday, Cowboys versus the Dragons. Does the Red V get in the win column for the first? No, they don't. Even though King Tonga is going to be in the halves, I think that they're still in trouble. I think Todd Payton's team is really starting to round into form. I'm really excited. I hope Jake Clifford takes on the game the way that he did against the Storm. It would really set up for some exciting ball. But I've got the Cows beating the Dragons. And then finally, a Queensland battle. Broncos versus the Titans. Titans coming in after their first victory of the season. The Broncos coming in after a victory for the Battle of Brisbane. I'm going Broncos. I want to think that the Titans are going to really use that as a springboard, that victory, but they didn't show me a lot. They just showed me that they had a little bit late over the Dragons, a team that can't close. So I've got the Broncos making it 3 in a row. Sunday, Waz versus the Sharks kicking that off. What a great game that's going to be. I cannot wait for that game. And I have the Waz coming into the Shire and getting a victory over the Sharks to get back in the win column. And finally, to end the matches on Sunday, this is just a great doubleheader for Sunday. Raiders going up to the Hunter to take on the Knights. I'm starting very much to be a Knights believer. I've got the Knights getting the victory and taking down Ricky's Raiders to close out the Easter Sunday festivities. And then we got the match. Easter Monday, Tigers versus the Eels. It is going to be an epic match. It's going to be fun to watch. I hope that it's as competitive as it should be, but there's a lot of losses, like I said. Iangi is out for the Eels, so I've got the Tigers winning this one, and it could be a beating. It could. I don't know if it's going to be that, but looking on paper with the momentum and what the Tigers team think that they need to do, and what they've shown, this could be I'm not saying it. I'm not hexing anybody. Tigers, though, get the victory. Let's go over the round 5 picks. We got the Dolphins, the Rabbitohs, the Panthers, the Cows, the Broncos, the Waz, the Knights, and the Tigers as you get over that chocolate haze that'll be going through your head on Easter Monday. My gut of the round, Dom Young. Again, what the performance that he put together with a smile, Shedheads. 3 tries, 269 running meters, 1 line break, 7 tackle breaks. That big man was taking care of big problems and giving out a lot of bigger problems. Big victory for the Newcastle Knights. Shedheads, I will say this early. Happy Easter. Stay safe over this Easter holiday weekend. But enjoy the time with your families. And hopefully you get to enjoy some time with your families as you get to watch some incredible footy. But remember, try to remember back in the back of your head what this Easter means and what it's supposed to really mean besides the bunny, even though I'm a big fan of the bunny. But again, until next week, stay out of trouble. Enjoy your Easter holiday. Don't get caught. This has been Outside the Sheds. I'm your Shedadamus, Corey Jackson. Until next week, see you later.
And that was another fantastic episode of Outside the Sheds with Corey Jackson, talking all things NRL and all things sports. So please remember to smash the subscribe button and share this with your family and friends and show them what Australian sport is all about.